This is the story of a small village where something strange happened, something no one could ever explain. I am going to tell you about a deep, old well that stood in the middle of the village, forgotten by most, but feared by all. They said it whispered at night. They said it called out to people. And once you heard the voices, you were never the same again. It all began when a man named Asan moved into the village with his wife and daughter. They had bought an old house near the well, unaware of the stories surrounding it. Asan was a city man, practical, logical. He didn't believe in ghost stories. His wife, Zara, had her doubts, but she stayed quiet. Their daughter, Sana, was just 10 years old, curious and full of life. The first night in the new house, everything seemed normal. The air was cool, and the village was silent. But as the clock struck midnight, a strange sound echoed through the darkness. It was a whisper, soft, distant, yet clear. "Help me." Asan sat up in bed, heart pounding. Had he imagined it? He shook his head and lay back down. It must be the wind, he thought, but then he heard it again, this time closer. "Help me." "Please." Asan got up and looked outside. The village was still, the only movement coming from the trees swaying gently in the breeze. But his eyes stopped at the well. The shadows around it seemed darker, heavier. He could feel something watching him, but he shook off the feeling and went back to bed. The next morning, he asked the villagers about the well. An old man, Baba, Jamil, sighed and warned him. "That well is cursed," he said. "Long ago, a young girl fell inside and no one could save her. Her cries for help never stopped. Even today, people hear her voice at night." Asan laughed. "It's just an old legend." The old man's face remained serious. "Believe what you want. Just don't go near it." Asan dismissed the warning, but that night, the whispers returned. This time, they were clearer. "Come closer. Help me." Asan covered his ears. It was just his mind playing tricks, he told himself. But then he heard something else. Footsteps. Small, slow, deliberate. They were coming from Sana's room. His heart pounded as he rushed to check on her. The door creaked open, and his blood ran cold. Sana stood by the window, staring outside at the well. Her eyes were wide, her face pale. "She's calling me." "Papa," she whispered. Asan pulled her away and shook her. "Who's calling you?" "The girl in the well," she said. "She says she's lonely." Asan didn't know what to say. He told himself it was just a dream, a child's imagination. But deep down, he felt something wasn't right. The next day, he and Zara decided to take Sana to the city for a few days. But before they could leave, Sana disappeared. Panic set in. The entire village searched for her, calling her name, knocking on doors, looking in every house, every street. But there was no sign of her. Then Asan heard a faint giggle. His heart stopped. It came from the well. He ran towards it, his breath short, his hands shaking. When he reached the edge, he looked down. The well was deep, dark, endless. And then he saw her. Sana stood at the bottom, smiling up at him. "Sana," Asan shouted. "Hold on, I'm coming." But she only tilted her head. "She says you should come down too, Papa." A chill ran through his body. "Who?" "The girl. She says we can all stay with her. Forever." Asan's mind spun. He grabbed a rope, tied it to a tree, and began to climb down. The air grew colder as he descended. The deeper he went, the darker it became. And then he felt it. A hand, small and ice-cold, gripping his ankle. Terror shot through him. He kicked, struggling to free himself. The whispers grew louder, surrounding him. "Stay. Stay with us," he screamed, thrashing against the unseen force. Suddenly, the rope snapped and he fell. But just before he hit the bottom, strong hands grabbed him and pulled him up. The villagers had arrived just in time. When he was safe, he looked down again. Sana was gone. Days passed, but she was never found. The well was sealed with heavy stones, and the village never spoke of it again. But every night when the wind blew through the trees, Asan could still hear her voice. "Papa, help me." And he knew the well would never let her go.